If Claude has been giving you generic output that sounds nothing like you, well, welcome to the club. That's what it does straight out of the box, which is why you need to train it to sound like you. It's not your fault and it's not Claude's fault either. It's just that nobody told you there's a setup step before any of it works. When you download this, the manual that I included is going to walk you through every bit of the setup step by step. This video is going to give you all the context. I'm going to tell you what we're building, why I built it this way, and where each piece lives. By the end, this is all going to make a lot more sense. So if you stick around for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll explain the 4-layer process I created, and I promise there is no code involved. So if we start at the beginning, every Claude chat starts from scratch. Even if you've been using it every day for a year, the next conversation you start has no idea who you are, what you charge, how you write, or what you're trying to do in your business. So Claude makes guesses and fills the gap with the most generic version of the answer because generic probability is all it has. So the fix is to give Claude permanent context. Once Claude has a permanent picture of who you are and what your business does, every session starts knowing all of that information. That's what the core of this setup is. Each of the 4 layers is a different kind of context, and I made sure that each one sits in the place that Claude reads it from. Here's why we use 4 layers now instead of one big folder of files, which is how I was doing it before. Each layer answers a different question: who you are, how you sound, what the business knows, and what should be remembered over time. If you put the wrong thing in the wrong place, it's why most setups never feel right. So layer 1 is the one that Claude reads before every conversation. As of June 2026, it lives in Settings on the General tab in a box called Instructions for Claude. The helper text underneath it reads something like, "Claude will keep these in mind across chats and cowork." That's the spot that you want. The core is short on purpose, and you really only need about 6 or 8 lines. Your name, your business, what you do, the 2 or 3 adjectives about your voice that describe you, and lastly, the hard rules that you never want Claude to break. A perfect example is removing all em dashes from the writing. But that's really all there is to layer 1. Custom instructions have a length limit, and in this part, that's doing you a favor, actually. It forces you to only put what has to be true in every conversation in there. Everything else lives in the other 3 layers, and we're going to save the details for that. The reason it stays short is anything you put here loads into every chat, whether the chat needs it or not, and we don't need to put everything in here anymore. The detail belongs where Claude can get to it on demand, which is layers 2 and 3. Layer 2 is your voice, and we're going to package that up as a skill. If you don't know what a skill is a single text file with a front matter label and a body. There's no coding involved. The label is what makes Claude grab it when the work calls for it, and the body is your voice profile. Skills live in the main sidebar under Customize. Once a skill is installed, it goes with you in every chat, any project, basically anywhere that Claude works. The pro move, that's to hand Claude a bunch of your real writing, like a stack of real emails that you've sent or posts or articles that you've written. Claude's going to extract your voice profile from all of that evidence. The fact is, nobody can hear their own accent, so to speak, and it's hard to describe your own voice, so you let the extraction do the work. Then you read what it found, you fix what's wrong, and that becomes your skill. The voice ends up being super accurate because it was built from how you actually write. But there's one more important thing to let you know about. Voice and format are separate problems. The ability to sound like you isn't the same as how you lay out a proposal or how long your posts are. So the scaffolding that we're building has room for a couple of real examples, and that lets Claude match your structure too. Layer 3 is where all the facts live. Things like company information, your current goals, your background, and anything Claude should know but doesn't need to load into every chat. These facts live in a Claude project where Claude retrieves the ones it needs when the work calls for it. Now, here's the move that almost nobody knows about. Keep each file small and devoted to a single purpose, meaning one file per topic. When a project gets really, really big, Claude pulls in the parts that match the question, and what you get back is a tight, focused file without all this unnecessary info. If you put everything in the kitchen sink into one file, it's going to come back with all sorts of wrong information. As a side note, there's one totally optional reference file that does something a little bit more than the others, and it's in your download as the Stories and Analogies bank. It holds your true stories, your real numbers, and the things you actually talk about when you explain your work. With this in the project, the output starts saying specific true things that only you could say, like real names, real numbers, your own analogies. Try it out once everything else is set up. Now, layer 4 is what we think of when we think that AI has a memory. It's the running impression that Claude builds of you over time. You don't type this one in, you just work on it and it takes shape on its own. As of June 2026, the controls for this are located in Settings, on the Capabilities tab, in the Memory section. There are two parts in here that are really important. The first lets Claude pull context from all of your past chats. The second one, the one labeled Generate Memory from Chat History, is the one that builds the running impression. Leave both of those on. The View and Manage Memory button opens what Claude has gathered about you to date. So go ahead and read through it, fix anything that's wrong, and your edits are going to stick from there. From there, just let the layer build up as you use Claude day in and day out. You only have to nudge it when one of those standing rules that you created needs a little bit of refinement. The trick to this system, and it's not really even a trick, it's just the right way, is you build this in order on purpose. The core memory info is going to set the identity of every other layer. The voice skill comes next because once Claude knows who you are, it needs to know how you sound. The reference files go in third because by then Claude is already responding in your voice and just needs more facts. And the automatic memory comes in last because there's nothing to remember until you've started using this setup for real work. Here's a note on the menu names. Now, Anthropic is going to do what it does, and it's going to move things around. The locations I'm showing you here are accurate as of June 2026, and it's all dated in the manual. When something moves around and you're looking for the control that does the same job, it might not have the exact same label. But the methodology doesn't change when the menus do, and I'll try to keep things updated in future versions as best as I can. Lastly, you may have heard Anthropic now sells a small business product with a whole bunch of connected tools and pre-built workflows. That's a totally different product from what we're doing here, and it runs on the higher Max plan. What it is, it's an automation layer, and it gets into a lot of agentic work. What this setup builds is the foundation underneath all of that. If you ever need to turn that automation on, this setup is what makes it produce work in your voice and use your real numbers. You build this part first because that has to be right. Claude Pro is all you need for everything you just saw. You don't need the Max plan for this. The owners who get the real work out of Claude are the ones who do this type of setup. The setup is the skill. Like I said before, the manual walks you through every step of the process in detail, but now you know what you're building and why. My suggestion once you get everything built is to give it 30 real uses before you judge it. By then, you'll have stopped thinking about the setup and it'll just be used for everything. So good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.